Hi, everyone, and welcome to the second of four LMGI's Meet the Finalists Zoom panels. We've been doing these panels for probably about 5 years now, and it still, never ceases to amaze what it takes behind the scenes for all of these location professionals who scouted and managed these productions to pull it all off. I really want to thank my co-moderators this afternoon, Miguel Tapia and James Parker, who are going to be helping me chat with all of our wonderful finalists about their projects. But I also wanted to take a minute to tell you a little bit about the LMGI, especially for those of you who are not yet members. The LMGI is a nonprofit 501(c)(6), and our sole reason for existence is to promote what location professionals like you and me do for a living and to celebrate excellence on location. We're kind of a public relations arm for the profession, educating and elevating awareness to the public, government agencies, producers, directors, and even the rest of the crew on what it is that we do, and particularly our contributions to the creative process. We do that through programs like these Zoom calls, meet the finalists, and also locations behind the Oscars around Oscar season. We also have outreach, events, advertising, educational panels, proactive public relations efforts. Additionally, we publish the very beautiful Compass magazine, which has tons of photographs from your fellow location professionals. We are almost 100% volunteer managed, with the exception being Erica Howard, who is our very wonderful communications and operations director. She's on this call. And with that being said, we really do need all of your membership subscriptions to kind of keep this going. So there are various membership levels that coincide with your level of experience and where you are in your career, whether it's apprentice to emeritus. So if you don't know about us and you aren't a member yet, please feel free to reach out and check us out at locationmanagers.org. Let's get into this panel. And I'm going to hand this over to Miguel Tapia, who's going to be chatting with our finalists from The Walking Dead, Daryl Dixon, season 2.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sasha, for the great information and introduction. My name is Miguel Tapia. I'm a Los Angeles-based location manager. Today, I come to you from my office. I am not working today, though. I just happen to be here. I'm very excited. Today, we have Julie Betoit. She is from France. She worked on season 2 of Gerald Dixon. Julie, welcome to this panel discussion. Congratulations on the nomination. If you just want to say a quick hello to everyone.
And thank you, and hello to everyone. And there is also in this Zoom Olivier Servanin, season 1, and was making part of the season 2 also.
Perfect. Yeah, welcome, Olivier and Julie. I'm going to get right into it. So, Daryl Dixon, I've watched both seasons actually, and because of this panel discussion, I watched season 2, but I was a little delayed in watching it. And I was very impressed with the work that happened on season 1, considering so much of it was shot in France, if not all of it. But season 2 definitely stepped it up a notch. There are some really in season 1, we introduced one of the hero locations for season 2, which was the Mont Saint Michel, which featured heavily in season 2. There also was a sequence that was filmed at the Louvre, which, if I understand correctly, was probably one of the first times extensive filming to this extent has ever been done there. And so I hope we can dig into that a little bit and pick your brains on, to use a zombie metaphor. And then the Défense, which also La Défense, which also featured heavily in over the season. So, Julie, if you could please share with us what your role was, what your involvement was as far as locations go in this particular season. Olivier, I'm going to ask you the same thing as well.
Okay, so in fact, I took over this job just after Olivier. Olivier was in charge, was a supervisor on season 1. We are both friends since many, many years. And he had to go on another movie. So I taken care and I keep his crew. Mostly he's part of his crew because we work with the same crew. But some of the crew was new. For example, Antec who take over on season 1 and season 2 as a location manager. We never knew him before, but and it was a good rencontre, as we say. And so we organize the crew as really to be the link in between the directors, whatever they were. We had three different directors, the production for sure, the production designer, and so when when you are supervisor, you are really the link. And then after you have all your location managers and you spare all over your country because we were filming all over the France.
What areas of France in general can you point out that you filmed in for season two?
Season 2, the big base was Paris and all around Paris, but for sure we still have the Mont Saint Michel. For the end of the season, the famous tunnel, we had to go at the north of France, nearby Belgium. And as we have to shoot the Greenland, the production thought they would have to move in another country,
Mm,
but we find out a place in the Alp,
mhm.
and we shoot there.
It was great. I would not have known. It was beautiful. It was a very interesting sequence. You felt trapped in that world, just surrounded by the mountains. It was
Exactly,
an excellent
exactly.
job. I'd love to dig into Mont Saint Michel. So Mont Saint Michel is a location of historical significance. It is a castle. It's a remote castle, right? Um, if you could just give me a brief on what is Mont Saint Michel, and then go into what challenges you had getting that location to be a part of this season. And I mean, it seems like you were there pretty much every episode. So dig into that for me. I'd love to know more about that experience. But if you can give us a little bit of the historical context of being there and what that was like for you, you know, um, as a French person.
Huh. So, as a French person, it's a very particular place in France. It's an old abbey in the middle of the sea. We can say there is a bridge to go there, but and it's one of the places the most uh, visited, not visited, but where there is a lot of tourists. I think it's more than 2 million a year. So the big challenge was to try to find when we will be able to shoot there. But we reduce the maximum to be there because it's very difficult with the tides, with it's really tiny, it's really crowded. So in the movie, you have the Mont Saint Michel. There is a lot of things done in the streets, but all what is location interior, we find these ones in many other places, in locations, never on stage. I think we spend 5 days on stage on
We'd
season.
like to hear
Yeah, yeah.
that.
It was a stage from season 1. So so we make a kind of construction, uh,
Hmm.
a place there, a place here,
Hmm.
and, and we built our Mont Saint Michel. In fact, in
Got it. Yeah.
many cities.
So most of the exterior shots, which were beautiful, you shot there, and
Yeah,
a
we
lot of the
shot there.
interiors you filmed.
We shot all the what is all around the sea, on the nearest streets, on the top of the abbey. But for example, the inside the church, inside the, well, you know, the big place where they all together. They have dinner, blah blah blah. It's another abbey somewhere in France. So it's really little stickers,
Like patchwork. Yeah.
like behind
Yeah.
you, like behind you.
Exactly. Yeah. Those are all your
In
locations.
that,
All of that made the most
exactly.
famous show.
Exactly.
No, I mean it's great. It's excellent work because you really tied and felt like you were in one place, but so often in our world we do piece together a real location and make it seem like it's one place, but really it's so many. Um, how much time overall would you say you spent traveling on this project outside of, say, Paris?
Traveling.
And to film in other areas, like how much of the show, percentage wise, would you say you were traveling to other locations outside of
Other
Paris?
locations than around Paris? Huh. Uh, 20, 25 days, I should say.
Okay, okay. And Olivia, if you want to chime in there, please do, by the way.
No,
But
the
yep,
what was very interesting on the show that the showrunner David Zabel was a very fan of France and like France, and he didn't have the eyes of a regular American guy, as I can say. That he was very fan of showing something different than on other shows. So we work together. That's why when he has the idea to go on Mont Saint Michel, we went very quickly with Antec to see the guy of the Mont Saint Michel in order to have the to tell him that we are going to be there for 2 seasons, that we need to play the game with them. And they said, you can come here. I can give you 5 days, 5 days, 5 days. So, and David can write the story like that. And it's the same for the Louvre. We went, I went to the Louvre on the first month of the season one in order to have 2 nights in the Louvre because that's very hard to have. So, and David was fantastic also. And Nicola was the location manager for the Louvre. So that's as you can see in the show, that was very impressive because there is no VFX except on the pyramid, but we put on the exterior all the garbage, everything, and it was a very quick night. And
Um, it was a quick
yes,
night, but how long did it take? You mentioned that you started the dialogue about filming in the Louvre on season one, is that correct?
yeah.
yeah,
Okay. And then before you even started prepping season two, you were talking about this location.
yeah, yeah,
I okay. How long
yeah.
then from when you started talking to them did it take to before you shot at the Louvre?
Oh,
How,
but it's 1 year.
1 year. So it took you one
Yeah,
year to get how many nights of filming? One or two?
two
Two,
nights.
2 nights of
right.
filming. So you had to
Yeah,
work on
well,
that for a
no,
year.
1 day and 1 night.
Well,
Sorry.
One day,
one
one night.
day was the Tuesday. The day was the Louvre is closed, and one night.
I have to ask, was that the real Mona Lisa?
Yes.
Okay. Great.
Oh,
So
it's
there's a
it's supposed to be. We didn't put it, repress it. It was the one they gave us. I don't know if it's a real one or
if
not,
it's the
but
real one or not.
yeah, that's
We'll
a
just
mystery of the
we'll just
Louvre.
pretend. We'll just pretend that it was the real
Yes,
one.
yeah,
If you haven't seen the show, there is like the Mona Lisa kind of plays a big role in Madame Genet's sort of storyline. Really,
yeah.
it kind of it sort of it gives you a little bit of insight into what's going on in her head. So well done there. And you shot inside of the pyramid that was designed by Ian Pei, right?
Yes, yes.
What were some of the conversations that you were having with people about trying to get inside that pyramid and then to spray blood on it, by the
Oh,
way?
But that,
the blood have
yeah,
been really a
yeah,
problem for
yeah.
them. See,
But
it has been the last clearance they give. mean,
That was the last clearance you got, was
yeah,
to
yeah.
do the
And
blood.
But
we had to bring them some blood that we used on the film. They had scientists analyze
yes, yes.
blood, blah blah blah.
Hopefully,
Um,
hopefully, just to let you know that with Julie and Nicolas in charge, we shot many years ago the Da Vinci Code in the Louvre.
hmm.
So they knew us. So it was,
They knew you would take care of it, and you were serious players. You know, you
yeah,
were,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
That's always
Um,
good to know the people,
so
even
for
if
those,
most of them are retired now, because Da Vinci Code was a long time ago.
but you're still here.
Yeah,
And
Yes,
for
we
those
are.
who don't know, there was a sequence in the storyline where they're shooting inside the pyramid, the glass
yeah,
pyramid, and the
yeah,
character is trying to get to her husband, and she's kind of, you see them running side by side through the glass. They're seeing
yeah,
each other,
yeah,
and at some
yeah.
point he gets zombie out and some blood sprays onto the glass. So it seems like such a small detail, but really I can only imagine the level of discussions you had to go through to just get to this last final clearance to do that blood.
Yes.
Were there any other particular interesting challenges related to filming there at the Louvre?
But
After regular
it's
execution.
Yeah.
it's to close the area. You've got the permit at 5 p.m. to close everywhere around the Louvre. So at 5 p.m. you have to clear all the place in 5 minutes because the crew is waiting. So that was quite challenging.
So you had the crew on your shoulder saying, "Can we go? Can we go? Can we go?"
Yeah, 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 yeah.
The
As
Louvre
always, as
saying,
always.
"Wait, wait, wait."
That's that's our job. Yeah, so no
Yeah.
problem.
I'm gonna just kick this back to you guys. What would you like to share about your experience working with this specific crew and this specific production that might have been different for you on some of your other projects? And
The
I'll have
thing,
both of you answer. Yeah.
yeah, okay. Oh, sorry, Julie. So the first thing is that the first time we work with uh, on an American project with 90% of French food. Usually you got 50-50, something like that. But as it was there for 2 seasons, we know that all the even the DP was French. So that's the big difference. But we've got the American producer and the showrunner for sure, and
Hmm.
the actors. But that was the big difference for me. Really?
Okay. And
Yeah,
Julie?
yes. Also, no, normally when we work for American production, I mean, most of the crew come from USA. Here it was a French crew with foreign just producer, showrunner, and directors. That's it.
Yeah. The
Well, I just
spirit,
want to say, go
it was the American spirit still,
ahead.
but
Oh,
with
we
a
know how to
French
bring that
view.
spirit.
Yeah. No, no, no. It was great, really.
It was
No,
great,
it's
and to
fantastic.
work
Uh,
with a showrunner like David Zabel. It was really really feeling us because we was working end to end.
yeah, yeah.
Watching
It
a lot
was.
of the behind the scenes stuff, you could see that there was a lot of love and
Mm,
camaraderie between the
yeah.
American crew and or the producers in this case and the actors and the French crew. I could see a lot of that. There was love around. Thank you so much to both of you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you for
much.
joining us.
Thank
Congratulations
you.
on the nomination. You guys are world-class location managers, and I wish you the best of luck. I'm going to kick this back
Thank
over
you.
to Sasha.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you.
Um,
Thank you.
Now we've got Zachary Hine and Haley Ansler, who were on 1923. They also won for 1923 season one last year. So this year we're going to be talking to them about season two. We've got some changes happening. Hey guys, how are you doing? Where are you?
I'm in,
Hello.
hello, hello. Thanks for having us. I'm in Austin, Texas. I think, yeah, Hayden, where are you?
I'm also back in Austin, Texas. So both here.
Texas it is. Speaking of Texas, I understand that most of production moved from Montana to Texas for season two, if I'm correct. Is that right?
In order to keep what the state incentive program in Texas kind of drew the production office to move. But we still kept, I want to say like a third. Stop me if I'm Hayden, jump into if I it say something, yeah, if I'm inaccurate. I think about 30 days was in Montana, and then the rest we kind of moved down here to base.
Okay.
Yeah, for the incentive program that Texas is.
So where did you all end up filming as far as the things that you brought to Texas? Because we've got some of your established locations in Montana that probably stayed the same, but like how far and wide did you go as far as Texas?
We based in Austin and did a majority of the work around, like, sort of in the outskirts, just Austin's developed so much, there's nothing really in 20s. So a lot of our work was like finding things that matched in kind of sort of the older towns that are on the like the next ring out. So about 30 miles outside of town. We basically, I want to say we looked at most of all of them, but we probably worked in about 12 different little cities the outside of the city center. And then we worked in Galveston to do some of the beach and boat stuff. And it was sort of there was also scripted. So we actually there was a lot of scripted Texas piece. There was a lot of half of the story kind of picks up in Texas. So and characters are leaving Montana and coming to Texas as well to kind of weave the back into the, I guess, Yellowstone story. So there was so it was, although you had the established locations in Montana and the ranch was in Montana, a lot of the actual scripted work was based in Texas as well. So but yeah, Galveston, Amarillo, all over Central Texas, San Antonio, and then we covered a lot of we covered a lot of places in Texas. I think we scouted. We also took a break there for the strike, so I think we were scouting that whole time too. So we basically scouted. I want to say almost every single period train station in the state, and probably other surrounding ones to find this like shootout train station scene. So yeah, anyways, I could keep going on and on, but
Seems
to
like
answer
you
your question,
left no stone unturned, really, as far as so what were some of your top little towns that you found that could match for sort of 1920s?
um Hayden, what do you think? That I feel like we got well,
Lockhart,
oh yeah,
Martindale.
Lockhart, Texas, Martindale, San Antonio. There's an old place there by the Alamo in San Antonio. Don't it basically it's all
It's
these
on
old
Broadway.
you have all these old 20s buildings, and it just um, do some set dressing and some construction, and you know uh, drive some picture cars too. It's funny how much you do these set dressing and all this stuff, and then you put in a bunch of picture cars and some people, and like back. I think another thing too is I think we had 300 background in San Antonio that day too. So um, it was not only was it finding 20s places, it was also kind of controlling them, taking them over for like 2 or 3 weeks, sometimes a month at a time, and closing down businesses and traffic, and then redesigning everything. I mean, we left some things to visual effects, but most of it, especially if it was interacted by like on screen and kind of harder to VFX, we actually did it practically. We painted, removed stuff, removed lighting, modern light fixtures, or whatever, you name it. And then you know anyways, I think that any little, I also like Galveston. So Galveston was you know, I don't, before the 1900 hurricane, Galveston was basically like one of the largest, you know, one of the largest ports for immigration and all that stuff. So there's a lot of old sort of still it's pretty untouched architecture in Galveston as well. But that was a real we spent a week of actual filming in Galveston, and I think we were there for 2 months setting it up. The old, you know, like the old they have an old immigration center there too, where I think most of the, you know, the large one of the largest in the country for immigration besides, you know, Ellis Island. We doubled that for Ellis Island there in a Masonic lodge, but um yeah. Um
These sound like some really long, long props that you were dealing with, and this is something that comes up often with the period pieces, especially because there's just a lot that needs to go into like changing these things. And Hayden, like you being sort of like boots on the ground is a key. Like, how were some of your experiences with this? Like any crazy stories from places that you took over for a month?
Um, well, we've got lots of everywhere we went felt like a lot of prep. It was always weeks of paint and construction, and then removing striping on streets or chopping stop signs and all those little things. It gets kind of crazy, and then you add schedule changes and weather into all of that. It felt like, I don't know, I felt like we were battling weather, whether it was prep or shooting. So prep was either super extended or very rapid for something that's a period TV series. I felt like we were, I don't know, everywhere we went felt like a little mini movie, just with the time we spent there and the crews dedicated to those certain areas or cities or wherever we were, rural Texas too. So
Yeah, I'm curious about some of the more rural areas too, especially once we start getting into more kind of like natural landscapes, because we've got lots of sweeping landscapes that you see here, whether it's like in Texas or Montana, or we're like in a forest. And I always wonder like what goes into scouting these locations? Like, are you in a helicopter? Are you hiking? How do you know that this is the perfect grove of trees that your director wants versus this one? Like, what's that whole process like?
Zach rode horses through the Paladuro Canyon to find our stuff,
Yeah,
but
it was
we've
funny.
used,
One day I was on a boat in Galveston, and then I drove to Houston, got on a plane, flew to Amarillo, and then at the end of the day I was on a horse in the Paladero Canyon. So it was in the so it was like it was kind of a it was a it's a crazy it's yeah, I don't know if that helps explain it, but yeah, that's funny that you brought that up.
Scouting by horseback, like camera on a
yeah,
horse.
Yeah, camera horse.
yes, he's, there's a photo somewhere of you on a horse taking photos. So we
Um
also took jeeps. We like tagged along with a jeep crew that goes in and out of the canyons just to get down and see the bottom of the canyon because it's inaccessible. So it's just every mode of transportation.
you know, also, I mean, the our our show is very script loyalist. Like if it was scripted, oh, this hits the tree, this we would go out and actually find that tree, and that would we'd block it out on you know, kind of pick a place, you know, pick a place, block out the, you know, shoot it and block it out, and then be like, this is the reason why this works, and you know, so it was a lot of like driving around with a script and just, you know, having to go, you know, revert back to like what's actually scripted, how is this, you know, done, because you know, I guess there's so many moving parts too that, you know, if you um yeah, to answer your question is what I guess I'm trying to do, but you know, if some arrow comes in and hits a tree and then whatever, they're in a little grove, it was kind of that kind of dictated how what we were looking for, where we were, and how, you know, and how we scouted it. um,
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, it was the 20s, so everything had to be out in the middle of nowhere. So everything was, you know, base camped at the road, at, you know, at the entrance of whatever property or town hall or whatever. But in this case, like a ranch, base camped at the head of the ranch, and then, you know, trucked all the equipment and people, you know, miles in some cases into where we were actually shooting. The Palador Canyon too, which is I guess the second largest canyon in North America after the Grand Canyon. It basically is, if you can imagine trying to get a shooting. There's a funny photo. That's what I should have. The photo with the jib arm down, and hey, do you remember we had that jib down into the canyon, like, and there was a whole crew on the basically on the canyon.
Cliff face.
Everybody, you know, we put up, you know, we put what do you ha,
Yeah, we like hand lined, you know, the grips helped hand line ropes down, and people were carrying, you know, one camera body at a time or one combo stand down or a piece of the jib. It took them forever to
Yeah, I was gonna ask,
take
like,
it.
because between scouting and then actually bringing production there, like, what sort of, like, additional safety concerns are you looking into as far as like scouting alone by horseback, or having to bring things in sort of like piece by piece with someplace that's like way more remote than a lot of other productions are accustomed to filming in?
we had a safety crew that was there. What was the safety guy's name? We got along really well. You know, we had a really strong relationship after a few days with 20s buildings and ranches and going into Paladero Canyon and on rooftops or whatever. It's kind of just like anything, you know, like I feel like that's one of those things you try to just do, you know, be smart. Tell people to dress appropriately, you know. At the end of the day, you're going into a canyon, it's 105 degrees for 12 hours, and it's like, you know, we're around cattle. We closed down this one town and put 800 head of cattle down Main Street. So it's like, you know, the safety. I don't think we had really any big issues. Safety is always first, you know, like whether it be, I mean, you are in like, I don't know, yeah. So we had a safety guy that was very helpful. What was his name, Hayden? Do you remember? I forget. Geez. But anyways, the
I
whole
can't
group of
remember.
them, and they were there with us every day, you know. They're part of the crew, and just making sure people, you know, wore sunscreen, or, you know, whatever it was, uh, uh, with these hand ropes, or I mean, I'm sure they were cringing the whole time, but yeah, and there was,
Exactly.
but it happened, I guess. Yeah, we pulled it off without. I don't
Did
think.
it. Season two is complete. You got it.
Yeah.
I think I've got one question more for each of you before we move on to our next panel. But so, what's like a specific location maybe that you're particularly proud of when you look back on season two, and why is it so significant?
You're up first, Hayden.
I guess we kind of already talked. Well, I since we haven't talked about Montana, Paladuro would probably be what I was most excited to scout, prep, and shoot because it was such a logistical feat. But I would say the Montana where we built the replica Yellowstone Lodge on this ranch on the top of a hill, and it was a shell, you know, it was exterior house, and to kind of watch it from when we were scouting season one to find placement of a duplicate, you know, because the real location exists over across Montana in Darby, and Yellowstone was using it, and it was modern, and so we had to find a similar setting, less trees because it was 100 years ago, all these things, and mountains matching the background, and we prepped it and built it to scale, exterior, massive house. And I feel like over the course of season one and into season two, where we have this massive shootout and there's Molotov cocktails and we're Tommy gunning all the windows out, and there's cougars and wolves and crazy stuff happening up there. It was kind of a full circle moment. We wrapped the season shooting that shootout up at the lodge. So to be there when we found the, you know, broke ground to build it, and then this whole kind of hero's journey between our multiple heroes in the series just kind of come to a head, and then that's how we ended the series. It was like scripted finale and logistical finale, and I don't know where I'm going, but that was kind of my favorite. That was one of the main sets that I was tied to, so I enjoyed it. And who doesn't enjoy Montana being in the mountains? So that's mine.
That's good.
One thing we didn't really talk about either is that I'll be quick about it too. Is like our schedule was based entirely over the weather because we were chasing winter. So we started it was based in the winter, so it was cold and it had to be freezing cold in Montana and like kind of cold in Texas, but we had to start kind of in the summer. Um, so basically, we shot Montana in the dead of winter in Texas and the dead of summer. So we were like in both of the worst elements in each place. Anyways, that was part of like the whole scheduling and how much like these like, anyways, um, a character like these locations are part of the characters of like even scheduling a whole TV show out. Anyways, I think my favorite one was probably I like Galveston. I don't really know if I mean Galveston's a weird place, but I did like I mean I don't know what I'm saying, but Galveston. I I don't know. For some reason, I just like that old. I like uh, there's so much history there that it's kind of an interesting place to get back to and learn about and the old buildings. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I think the the coast, probably the Texas coast was kind of my favorite in terms of like texture and um, just like for that period. It, I think it was I think it was kind of like mass exodus from after that hurricane. So like it locked that time in pretty well. I mean, getting to work, I think basically all these little towns do, getting to work in these little towns like that are all basically time capsules of this era. That's was kind of my favorite part about it. Going to Butte, like why would you shoot a thing in Butte? It's like because it's a time capsule from the 20s. So all these things that was kind of my favorite part was just like getting to like kind of get dropped into that time period. But
Oh, that's wonderful. It really, your work really shines in this particular season. It's fantastic. Thank you both so much for joining us on this panel. Congrats on the nomination and looking forward to seeing you guys at the award show.
thank
And
you.
with that, I'm going to pass this back to Miguel, and we're going to talk to 100 Years of Solitude.
Oh, snap. Yes, congratulations, Zach. And sorry, David and Hayden. You guys did a great job on that project. So
Thanks, Joe. Thanks for chatting. Thanks for
yeah.
listening.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. So this next person, actually I have a close connection with. We worked together twice in Colombia several years ago. He is one of those people that you just want on your team because you know he's going to get things done and he's going to get it done well. And I'm just so proud to have the opportunity to engage with him on a project that was his first time as a location manager. And he went big. They say go big or go home. He did it big. And so I just want to introduce you to Emerson Espinosa Toledo, a friend of mine, and he's the location manager of 100 Years of Solitude. So, Emerson, say hello to the people.
Hello, hello, ¿cómo están?
Buen día, está bien. Okay, and just a little note, I will do my very best to translate for Emerson. So I will be asking the questions in both English and Spanish as best I can, and then translating his responses. So please bear with us. This might be slightly slower discussion than some of the other ones, and I really want to give him an opportunity to express himself how he wants to. So he'll be engaging mainly in Spanish. So, Emerson, ¿cómo estás? ¿Está bien?
Bien, muy bien, todo muy bien.
¿Y de dónde te encontramos? ¿Está en Bogotá?
Estoy en casa, estoy en Ibagué, muy cerca a 20 minutos de donde construimos uno de los macondos de Cien
Okay,
Años de
okay.
Soledad.
All right, so he's 20 minutes away from an area that they actually filmed one of the locations. So 100 Years of Solitude is a story about a fictional town in Colombia that these people traversed hundreds of miles to find, and end up settling in this one particular plot of land. And the story takes place over 100 years essentially. And you sort of see the history and you see this town progress from it literally being like a backwater jungle into a full scale town. And so, um, yeah, it's an incredible project. Emerson, yo quería preguntarte de cómo llegaste a trabajar en este proyecto. ¿Quién te conseguí o contraté a trabajar en este proyecto? ¿Cómo le pasó?
Pues mira, realmente una de las cosas más interesantes que tiene el proyecto es la apuesta a que sea un crew 100% colombiano. En realidad logramos tener un 95% de crew colombiano, siendo todas las cabezas de departamento, a excepción de los directores, pues uno de los directores y la diseñadora de producción extranjeros. De lo contrario, todo el equipo pues hacía parte como cabeza de producción colombiana. Dynamo, mi casa con quien he trabajado en varios proyectos, pues apuesta a este proyecto y me llama a mí para hacer parte pues como de cabeza de departamento y estoy ahí con Carolina Caicedo como productora ejecutiva y Juliana Flores.
Ah, Juliana, ok, perfecto. Y esto fue tu primer proyecto como gerente de locaciones, ¿cierto?
Sí,
Ok,
siempre he
great.
estado como key location en todos los proyectos, en los service, cuando venían como proyectos con extranjeros, pues como cuando estuviste acá, que podíamos ser siempre como un trabajo en equipo y un trabajo a la mano, pero como location manager, este fue mi primer proyecto realmente.
Okay, perfect. So the question was, how did you come about to starting this project? And what Emerson shared is that essentially, like, uh, this was one of the few projects he's worked on in a while, similar to Julie and Olivia's experience, where he was working with almost 100% Colombian crew, whereas oftentimes he's working with a larger majority of foreigners. This was one project that was largely Colombian. And because of that, there were a lot of the connections. Juliana Torres, who's someone I know as well, she's a producer over there that works for a production service company, was able to bring him on board to this project. And so that was his connection. So it's great to see big projects like this being supported by 100% local crew. So not that I love to travel for work, but I'd love to see other people excel too. Okay, gracias. Emerson, en este proyecto había un local, Macondo. ¿Lo estoy diciendo correcto?
Correcto.
Macondo, ok, perfecto. En Macondo, ¿cómo consiguieron Macondo? ¿Cómo fue el reto de conseguir un lugar que se va a cambiar cada capítulo? Se va a cambiar y se sigue creciendo. Entonces, háblame del reto de conseguir un lugar o lugares para
Sin
crear esto.
duda, sin duda el protagonista de la historia es el pueblo que es Macondo. Este lugar es realismo mágico. No existe en Colombia. Es como la combinación perfecta de lo que ves en Colombia y de lo que hay en Colombia a través de los años. Y asimismo es esta misma evolución la que teníamos que marcar y tener en diferentes, pues realmente en un solo pueblo. Pero por tiempos de producción y por diseño de producción, le apostamos a tener tres Macondos y construir tres Macondos. Entonces tuvimos que buscar eh, tres lugares específicos que tuvieran las características similares para poder construir en ellos Macondo.
So the question was, how did the main, really the main protagonist of this show, apart from the actual characters, was this fictional town of Mocondo. Again, it doesn't exist in Colombia. This is just a completely fictional town. Um, and because the story arc encompasses almost 100 years, they had to find three different locations that looked very similar, shared the same characteristics as each other, meaning had mountains in the background, had a river next to it. So they had to find three different areas that had similar characteristics where they could build the three phases of this town. where they first landed, where it was just rural, maybe a couple like wooden, houses, to like a little bit more advanced, where there's a courtyard now, to a full town with streets, paved streets. And all of this was, all three places had to be constructed and built from scratch. So they found the land and then they started building. And I believe, ¿cuánto tiempo se demora a construir cada Macondo?
Nosotros estuvimos aproximadamente 7 meses de construcción.
Each
Partimos
place.
del Macondo más grande, fue el primero en elegirse. Tuvimos varias opciones en diferentes zonas o regiones del país. Tuvimos que hacer como un equilibrio entre las potencias que tenía entre las montañas, el río, la zona y las facilidades de producción, o sea, cercanía al aeropuerto, a las vías, al ingreso, pues como todos los valores de producción que iban a tener versus las comodidades de producción. Una vez escogimos este Gran Macondo, empezamos la búsqueda de los otros dos un poco
De
más
los otros.
pequeños.
Okay. Okay.
Exacto, y durante los 7 meses se construyeron los tres Macondos con tres equipos diferentes en las tres locaciones al tiempo.
Entonces primero fue el más grande, luego lo
Ujú.
demás. Ok.
Y luego lo demás. Y el más grande empezamos a construirlo, acabamos los dos más pequeños y seguíamos construyendo el más grande, porque
Ok.
rodamos primero, se rodó cronológicamente,
Ajá.
entonces sí logramos pues encontrar el más grande, trabajar en el más grande, adaptarnos a las dos fincas más pequeñas y
Ajá.
empezar a filmar en ellas. Terminamos de filmar en las dos y llegábamos al Gran Macondo.
Okay. Okay. So, wow, that's really interesting. All right. So the question was, I actually forgot my question. I'm really sorry. So I'm just going to give you his response. Um, so each Macondo, they started with um, finding the biggest, the most modern of the three versions of this city in the script. And then from there, once they had their main sort of final location, then they started building on that land, and then from there they started looking for the smaller ones. And then they started they started shooting the first one while they're still building the smaller towns, and then eventually shot each smaller phase of this town. So, and that process overall was 7 month process. So, entonces me está diciendo que entre que estaba grabando lo más grande de los tres, estaba construyendo lo demás, ¿cierto?
De acuerdo, o sea, se estaba construyendo los más pequeños, porque en realidad estábamos filmando los
Claro.
más pequeños y seguía creciendo, el más grande seguía siempre en construcción.
Okay. So and because the bigger one always was in some phase of
Ya.
construction. So there's a process of where it kept advancing, it kept advancing, but it started at a point where it was already far more advanced than the other two. So um ¿cuánto tiempo te costó para conseguir los tres lugares antes de empezar con montaje?
En realidad, pues el más difícil de encontrar fue el Macondo uno, es decir, el origen, porque
Ajá,
tenía que estar un lugar demasiado selvático, tenía que tener el río, que le apostamos al río Magdalena, que es el principal río de Colombia. Entonces ubicamos una locación que tenía este río increíble, impresionante, que tenía bastante selva, eh, pero también tenía que tener las mismas montañas, que en este caso eran las del Cordillera de los Andes, y pues el gran árbol protagonista y tener un área nosotros construíamos el Macondo se construyó en 40.000 metros cuadrados, entonces era bastante grande, pero además tenía que ser selvático. Tal vez estábamos a menos de un mes de comenzar el tiempo límite de construir para encontrar este último Macondo, que en realidad era el primero.
una vez.
Un
Oh,
mes.
he had 1 month to find the place where they were going to build this set. So the question I asked him was, how much time did it take you to find these locations? And ultimately, his response was 1 month. Um, if you haven't seen this project, really watch it. It's incredible. once you realize that these were three different locations. Um, um, and I, I'm so sorry. Translating is a little hard for me because I'm trying to think now in two different languages. Um, so, ¿puede repetirlo, por favor?
Sí, tardamos un mes antes de
Vale.
empezar el tiempo límite de construcción.
Ajá.
Ahí encontramos este Macondo que era muy selvático.
Okay. All right. So yes, took 1 month to find the location that had the river, that had the forest elements, that had all the necessary elements, and then from there they started looking for everything else. Em, ¿Puede hablarme bueno, de cosas logístico? ¿Ok? Lo quería saber. Cuéntame de cuáles fueran las dificultades de grabar en el primer, el Mocondo 1, el
Sí,
origen.
el, uno era accesibilidad, o sea, realmente poder llegar con un crew de 400 personas a un lugar pues selvático, distante de la ciudad, tuvimos que mejorar las vías, construir accesos para el equipo, facilitar, digamos, áreas de Basecamp cerca al río, poder tener, digamos, equipo entrando por el río, material entrando por diferentes lugares para además preservar y cuidar lo que queríamos ver por un lado y no queríamos dañar por otro lado, ¿no? Que era la selva.
Ok. Um, y cuál fue como, ¿tenía acceso a otras ciudades más cerca, que eran cerca para
Sí,
conseguir como hoteles y ese tipo de cosas?
la ciudad base estaba a 2 horas de este lugar en carro.
Okay. So the original question was, what were some of the challenges that you had in terms of access to some of these locations? They were about 2 hours away from the nearest major town. Um, and a lot of the challenges had to do with how rural, how natural these locations were. So there weren't roads that gave you access to them. There's some locations that were like swamps where literally the actors are trudging through 5 foot deep water and they had to bring crew and camera into those places. And those were some of the specific challenges that he had, just trying to figure out how to get a 450 person crew. Era 450, ¿cierto?
Sí,
Equipo.
40,000, 450 crew.
Yes, he had 450 crew members that he had to get safely into these locations. And if you've been to Colombia, a lot of mosquitoes, a lot of like bugs. Also, I think you have to get like yellow fever shots and stuff. um, And so there's a lot of challenges in getting everyone there. Um, eh, Pantanos. Háblame de los pantanos.
Los pantanos, el reto, digamos, que teníamos era que el director quería ver dentro de los pantanos a todo el hecho entre niños, animales, ancianos, cruzando estos pantanos. Entonces, digamos que queríamos poder hacer pues como la búsqueda de un lugar que fuera seguro para el crew, que fuera seguro para los actores, seguro para los stunts, y para todos los que iban a ingresar, incluso cámara y demás equipo, por toda la ciénaga y atravesar, digamos, estos pantanos. El
¿Cuántos
red,
días tenían grabando en los
en los pantanos estuvimos grabando una semana,
una semana? Ok.
sí,
Y cada día en el agua.
en el agua, sí.
Okay. So I mentioned these swamps, and the question for him, I asked him if he could just talk to me a little bit more about filming in the swamps. Um, and they filmed for about a week with these actors trudging through the swamps, which is part of the journey of these travelers that before they got to this fictional town of Macondo, they had to traverse these swamps, and this was kind of like the last stop before they got to Macondo, where in the story everyone started out really excited about finding this new home wherever it may be. And this was like their lowest point where they're like, what are we doing? Should we turn around? Should we quit? He had shared this with me, but in watching the show, this is the lowest point for everyone right before they finally found their town. And so they're trudging along through water. And so they had to test the water. They had to make sure it was safe. They had to make sure that the crew could get in there safely. They had to make sure they could transport the equipment safely. So, um, and so those were some of the bigger challenges for him filming there. Emerson, no tenemos tanto tiempo, pero ¿qué, qué, qué tú quieres decir a lo demás de tu experiencia de trabajando en este proyecto como gerente de locaciones, por favor? Cuéntame.
Bueno, realmente, pues para mí fue muy bello trabajar en este proyecto porque era darle una pasada a Colombia, era poder mostrar a Colombia como un escenario fílmico a nivel internacional, era que todo el mundo pudiera verlo, al igual que imaginó con la lectura del libro, poder ver esa Colombia, ¿no? Ese realismo mágico en cada espacio, en cada lugar, en cada una de las escenas que estábamos planteando y que estábamos haciendo. Entonces, el reto era poder encontrar los mejores lugares porque sabíamos que lo iba a ver todo el mundo. Entonces, atinar, o sea, buscar y ser como detallistas y cuidadosos de cada plano, de cada escena, en cada uno de ellos, era como el reto y fue lo que más me gustó, como contar con un equipo increíble de scouter que estuvieron en todo el país buscando una escena mínima que era el cruce, pasar personas, recorrer, pero llegar a ese sitio con unas características específicas, como los pantanos, los pozos rosados, las salinas, el desierto, eh, pues todo esto, antes de llegar a Macondo.
Antes de llegar a Mukono. My question for him was, this is my final question, was, what would you like to share about your experience and what are you most proud about this experience? And I think for him to be filming on a project that's showcasing Colombia in a way that maybe hasn't been seen before, hasn't been experienced before, this sort of, and showcasing this very magical, town where this really sort of magical story literally takes place. But also the challenge for him as a location manager achieving that, finding these places that that can tell that story and that journey of these characters. And that was one of the, that challenge for him made that experience even better. So I want to thank Emerson. Thank you everybody for your patience. I really appreciate it. Gracias a Emerson por la conversación. Y ojalá que esto no va a ser tu último proyecto como gerente de locaciones y bueno, estoy muy orgulloso de ti y bueno, y ojalá que vas a seguir haciendo proyectos grandes como esto, ¿ok? Te amo.
Gracias,
Y un
gracias,
abrazo.
encantado y muchas gracias. Qué bueno coincidir contigo en esta conversación
Eso,
y con todos.
perfecto.
Gracias y felicitaciones.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I'm going to kick this back to Sasha for our next panel discussion and thank you everybody.
Emerson, thank you so much for being with us. Miguel, thanks you for doing double duty, questions and translating. Fantastic. We're going to take this over to James Parker.
My memory.
Parker is going to be talking to our finalists from Godfather of Harlem season 4.
Hi, I'm James. I'm from Los Angeles, and yeah, I'm going to talk to Chris about the Godfather of Harlem, season 4. How you doing, Chris?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, man. Thanks for joining us. This is your first nomination.
Yeah.
Congratulations. So you have 4 seasons. You've been on all 4 seasons?
Yeah. I'm one of the few sole survivors left. Yeah.
Oh wow. All right. Clean house. Well, obviously film in Harlem you're in the 1960s. Whereabouts in New York are you also filming?
Yeah. So less and less we've been filming in Harlem. On season 1, we realized quickly into it not to establish any of our hero locations. God willing, there was more than one season at the time in Harlem because it is gentrifying so quickly and it is modernizing. And a trend that we were seeing, whenever that was in season 1, is that not only is it modernizing, but it's modernizing with very flashy glass buildings that we just couldn't get away from. So we established most of our hero locations in Brooklyn, mostly far east Brooklyn, kind of areas that are not filmed as much. A lot of areas that don't see, the viewer doesn't see on camera, no matter what the show is. Um, and also a big part of why I choose where I choose or try to is to bring growth to neighborhoods. And these were neighborhoods that we could definitely help. So.
Oh, that's great. You want to expand on that a little bit more, growing the specific neighborhood that you guys filmed in that you've been able to return to and grow it and have an impact on it?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So, it's there's a lot of New York City projects that call for very certain icons or blocks or looks, and that's great. That's what keeps projects coming to New York. But there's also others that don't. Um, so when I am on a project where I am faced with that, I like to say, well, yeah, one of our characters was supposed to live on 116th Street and Fifth Avenue. And I say, yeah, okay, here's 116th Street and Fifth Avenue. Um, Great, fine. Or we can go to East Flatbush and here's a historical picture of that intersection, and here it is there. So starting with convincing them that that is the better option, and then spending a decent amount of time in the areas that I'm pushing or in the areas that are selected, just developing relationships, developing trust. A lot of these people have been screwed over in the past, so redeveloping that trust and goes a long way.
It's good. Yeah. Now that you're in season 4 and you've been back, how's the people of Harlem? How have they? I know you're not. Just said you weren't there much, but how have when you are there, how have those folks responded to the show and having a show about their neighborhood and their history?
Yeah, I mean it's we actually get a lot of really great help from the neighborhood. These neighborhoods love having us here. It's a story of the history of these people who were born and raised on these blocks, and they really take a lot of they just really like to see their version of New York, their version of growing up, their mom's version, their father's version, their grandmother's version. There's a lot of great energy around whenever we do go into these areas, especially because we do, we're a 1960s TV show, hour-long TV show that's basically running on a budget of a 30-minute comedy. And we just don't have the money to see whole blocks. We don't have the money to put 50 background cars. We have the money to put 10. So, I can use one end of one block for a scene and the other end of another block of the same block for another scene. And it's fine because we don't see the world. Um, and really trying to do that to the best of our ability and having a really great relationship with the showrunner and having a lot of trust with the showrunner and the producer, because I have stuck around for so long. I think we've gone through we're talking about season 4. We've been through 6 different production designers. We've been through 8 or 9 production managers. So so I do have a lot of trust, and the showrunner does trust me a lot. So I typically get the script first and can sit down with him and his team and say, "Hey, okay, I see what you're going for here. Let's workshop this. Let's figure this out. Like, how can we now make this possible? Because you're writing for the dream, and I want to satisfy the dream. But if this script goes anywhere beyond me, you're not going to get the dream because you're going to be told it's too expensive. So how can I help you? And in turn, you're helping me."
You must be doing something right because you're still there. And they're going through quite a few people.
Yeah.
But did you find an instance in season 4 where you lost a location last minute, had to pivot, had to find something very quick, very fast?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I hate this story and I also love it. We were one of the last scripts, if not the last script that we got, was this final meeting of a bunch of our gang lords and police chiefs, and everyone's kind of coming together because they want one goal for the future. And it's one of the first times we see a lot of these characters together. And it was scripted for a big shipyard, which we have a few and we've shot. We mostly have shot them for drugs coming into the country. We did a whole French Connection thing. We did a whole Cuba bringing drugs in. So when I saw this shipyard, I said to the showrunner, I was like, "Hey, don't you think the viewer might think that they're going to be bringing more drugs in, which is the opposite of what they're doing?" Um, he said, "Yeah, I've thought about that. What else can we do?" And I said, "Let's find a nice little secluded waterfront. It still satisfies the water. You know, you still get the sunset over water, but it's not so industrial and it's not so synonymous with what we've established as bringing drugs into the country." Everyone liked that. We found this really awesome little waterfront parking lot on Jamaica Bay, looking away from JFK, so we didn't have to deal with that. And it was great. And we were going to prep it the next day. And the person that we thought was the owner of the lot ended up not being the owner. He was just taking the money and running, and it ended up belonging to the New York State Parks Department. And in New York, at least, you can't film at a New York State Parks property, no matter what it is, no matter who you are, how much time, anything. Um, so yeah, we lost that the day before prep. I went back to my office, slamming my head against the wall, and my coordinator said, "Hey, I eat dinner at this place with my mom sometimes in Sheepshead Bay, and they have this parking lot and it's on the water. We could try that." So I jumped in my car with my designer and my showrunner. We went to this restaurant for lunch, and over the course of a lunch, we hashed out an agreement and we were prepping there later that day.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's incredible.
It was all on private property, so no permits.
Wow. Wow. That's how you
Yeah.
fix that problem.
Yep.
That's incredible. Congrats. So what are the locations specifically in Harlem that you can't, the Apollo comes
Yeah.
to mind. What's it like? I mean, that place is pretty iconic.
Yeah.
They're also still open. So how do you navigate that?
Yeah, so very carefully. Also, if you look at a street view map now of the Apollo, you'll see two giant skyscrapers on either side of it. So when we do go to the Apollo, which is probably once or twice a season, we shoot directly in front of it, looking straight at it, and we close down 125th Street and we do it in the street. For anything other than the main entrance, we go to King's Theater in Brooklyn. It was built the year before the Apollo, same architect, has a lot of similarities, and that's our Apollo.
Oh, wow. You're able
Yeah,
to cheat it. That's great.
yeah,
Um, talked about because yeah, a lot of my questions are gentrification, like how, and then when you started season 1 and then you end up in season 4, how much more are you having to pivot from then until now, changing like, oh well, we had this building and 1 and 2 and now it's gone because they're knocking them down and they're not building any new 1960s buildings. So how much have you had to deal with that on season 4?
There's a lot of buildings that get burnt to the ground and shot up throughout the seasons, very deliberately. If I get hint of the fact that that building might not be there this next season, or it might look very different. That's another one of those cases where I give our showrunner a call and I'm like, "Hey, just a heads up," and more than likely, that character will get killed off and their home will get destroyed. So yeah.
So you're killing off the characters based on their homes.
Yeah, pretty much. Well,
Yeah.
and, sometimes they don't die. Sometimes they,
Yeah.
but
Sometimes
yeah.
that's cool. The casino was a big um, focal point of season 4, and you had to construct it first. So, and you mentioned you don't have a crazy budget. So when you went out to find a casino or an area where you were going to build a casino, and you did have to kind of look like an empty lot, and
Yeah.
and you had to avoid all the modern buildings. What was that process like for you?
Yeah, I mean, thankfully, our showrunner said to me in season 2, "Hey, the season before Bumpy dies, we're gonna have him open a casino. Just a heads up." And I kind of honestly had forgotten about it. He was hoping I hadn't. And then when it came time to start talking about season 4, the idea of Bumpy, our main character, Forrest Whitaker, purchasing this lot that was a burned down warehouse, tying back to the French Connection when they burnt down a lot of warehouses in the Great Fire of Harlem in 1964 that we recreated in season 3. So he purchases this warehouse, then he demolishes it, and he starts building his dream casino. Um, what we did is we went back to the warehouse that we had a big fire in. We had a little bit of a scene there at the beginning, and then we ended up finding a construction site that worked for the first stages. It kind of still had columns of cinder block and, remnants of buildings. And then we found that it was great, but you could only look directly into it. You couldn't look reverse. So then we found another construction site not terribly far away that would work looking the direction that that one didn't. Um, and then we ended up finding our casino in Astoria, Queens. And we found them all around the same time, which let us have some more flexibility. And what we ended up doing is after episode 2, we destroyed any remnants of building that we shot on the first 2 episodes in that first construction site.
It's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the interior casino, they built one room and one office, and then the rest of it was made up of probably 9 or 10 different locations.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Last question for you. You
Yeah.
talked about convincing them to go to a location and then not being able to go there. What was another challenging, or your most challenging location, aside maybe from that you dealt with throughout the season?
It was challenging, but also rewarding. There's this really great block in Harlem. The World Tenenbaums mansion is on it. I mean, it's been around. I don't probably the 1910s, 1918, something like that. And I've been really wanting to shoot on that block since season 1, and the story's just never taken us there. We end up talking a lot about like the Vanderbilts and these aristocratic New York families in this season. And I started showing pictures of this street just kind of in passing. And then we ended up having this scene where one of our characters is coming back to Harlem after she's kind of been kicked out, and this man is driving her car, and they end up getting into a car accident caused by the driver. He's deliberately crashing the car so that he can kill her. Um, and they ended up saying to me, "Hey, what about that street that you keep pushing?" And I was like, "Yeah, great, sounds good, but I don't think anyone's ever shut it down fully." And I was like, "But we need to." So luckily, the new police lieutenant here in New York City is great. Can't say enough good things about him. And talked to him at length, and we made it happen. So we shut it down for 2 days. So yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. It's good to have pro film people
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
in the police. Well, Chris, thanks so much. It's been great chatting
thank
with you, and sounds like you're on. It's been a really good 4 years, and you're really steering the ship over there. So congratulations on that.
Yeah, thank you.
And we'll pass it back to Miguel.
So I'm going to be talking to panelists from Dark Wings. We have Nathan Bancroft and Connor here who are representing the show. Nathan, or Nate, however you want to refer you to as. Welcome.
I go by all of it, unfortunately.
All right. Well,
It's usually hey locations is what I respond to most. So you know.
I think we can. I think I see about 20 people here that can relate to that. Well, welcome. Congratulations on the nomination. Really excited to talk to you. Is this just to kind of get some context? Is this your first season with the show? Or have you done all the previous seasons?
No, I came on season 3, and then we just completed season 4 about a month ago. Also, so myself and Connor jumped on season 3.
Gotcha. Okay. Can you talk to me then a little bit about your experience coming on a show that has some established locations, maybe some recurring locations, whether anything changed in that transition, and what's different now?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, a lot of it was dealing with, obviously there were established locations. Luckily, ours is a lot of desert work. So we're always looking for landscapes. We're always looking for, sort of the bones that can help tell the story that luckily is kind of rooted in New Mexico. So we have, we have a really varied landscape that helps on our end, and a lot of locations that we can pull from. But a lot of us coming on season 3 was kind of rebuilding a lot of trust with the established locations, letting them know that we knew what we were doing, and we were there to make sure that the production was going to go smoothly, and just kind of building those bridges with people that maybe we hadn't worked with before, just to show that we cared, especially working in areas that a lot of the pueblos are really culturally sensitive. There's stuff that when we come in as a film company, people don't necessarily look for, that are really culturally sensitive to people who are allowing us access to these areas. So a lot of it was working with those folks to let them know that we cared about both, one, their land and the cultural sensitivity that comes along with that, but then also that we were a film company. We had to do what we needed to do in these areas. So playing a lot of the middleman for a lot of it.
Could you, for the audience, explain to us the cultural connection between the show and the locations, and then could you actually delve into maybe some of those cultural sensitivities that you were referring to? Like, what were some examples of those experiences you had?
Sure. A lot of the pueblos are not huge areas, so there's a lot of sacred sites that at first glance wouldn't necessarily stick out as anything. So, prayer rock rings, stuff like that kind of may not have been seen for a very long time. We would be going through with, our site reps. We'd be having to kind of clear archaeologically a lot of these areas to make sure there weren't artifacts, there wasn't stuff like that we'd be digging up or disturbing in any sort of way. So it's a lot of history that wasn't necessarily forward to us, but that we kind of got in the middle of kind of solving for our production, just in making sure that those areas were cleared, available for filming. It matched the look that we needed, but then also, those sites that may or may not cause potential harm to the cultural sensitivities. We had to obviously be cognizant of all that as well. So.
Who were some of those players that you were dealing with? Who were the people?
It was mostly, archaeological sites. A lot of the pueblos will have dedicated historical folks that would go out and survey these areas, make sure that there is anything that's catching their eye. Doing a lot of that. I know Connor was involved in a lot of it too. A lot of just FaceTime with people to make sure they knew when we were flagging something off, they knew that we were taking it seriously and not just doing it as lip service ultimately. So,
Gotcha.
but yeah, a lot of basically the archaeological folks for any given pueblo or any given site, that is who our main point of contact was for a lot of this.
And so Dark Winds is a period piece, like everyone else here, but it's period, and it's telling the story of a is it Navajo reservation, correct?
Yeah, it's set on the Navajo Nation. Yeah.
Okay. And in New Mexico. And although in this season, there's an additional storyline where the characters is in a border town, working as a border patrol. So there's a little bit of a distance from that, which it just expands the world a little bit more. Um, can you talk about what was the specific challenge between creating those two worlds? Because oftentimes when you're world building in a series, you do want to have something that helps differentiate it. And that can be difficult with desert landscapes. So what was the challenges in finding areas that help differentiate the Navajo reservation world and this storyline and this border town that this other character was living in?
Luckily they were both desert and considering New Mexico is mostly desert, that really helped. But then beyond that, a lot of it was more, we would go out with work with the production designer just to find the bones of what they were sort of needing to, find. The Mexico work is pretty easy in New Mexico just because the production designer was able to lean on stuff that already existed, and stuff that we were finding to help supplement that. And then ultimately, it's a lot of driving very lonely back roads to try and track stuff down. We're not a huge show, I think, like a lot of the folks here. So, it was a very small team. So I think our biggest challenge was ultimately having enough people to be able to spend the time out scouting and actually finding these things that were different, that made that difference known. While still trying to run a production while we're in the middle of it.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
So
There's a lot of time spent on the road driving, but when it's these kinds of locations, you spend even more time than usual.
Yeah, absolutely. And we just didn't, we didn't have an enormous team. It was myself, two key ALMs, and a couple other ALMs who were running the set basically. So, it kind of it fell between myself, Connor, and Patrick, to kind of do all of it and make sure we were kind of staying in front of everything and giving us enough lead time to be able to track these things down. So that was one of the main challenges, I think, over anything else.
I want to get into a little bit of nitty gritty here. Let's talk about some of these locations. There is a sequence that takes place sort of like a train station. There's multiple trains happening. Can you talk to us about that sequence and kind of the challenges you had there? Because that was probably pretty cool. I think it was in the last episode, correct?
Yeah, it was in the finale episode. Ironically, 1923 was looking for a train station for a shootout. We were looking ultimately for the exact same thing. So the writers were doing the same thing. But yeah, it involved, there's a private train that does tourist sort of things between Santa Fe and this small town called Lamy. So we were dealing with both sort of the logistics of the train ownership. We needed to ultimately, for the chase sequence through the train, help organize how we were going to reorganize the train cars, because there weren't enough train cars that actually made the sequence work. So we had to, middle of the day, reorganize the train in the middle of the day to then give us an extended length for the chase sequence.
So they're like, you're disconnecting train cars and reconnecting train cars?
Yeah, so they would have to pull off part of the track, drop a couple of the cars, reconnect it with the engine. And so part of it was, a good part of that sequence, we would have to be filming off the train while they reorganize the sequence of cars for the train to then get back on the train later in the day to then continue that sequence. So it was a lot of just the logistics of, normally I don't manage anything with engines or wheels, but that was a lot.
I was gonna say, like, were you really hands-on? Because typically, like, you're right, other people handle that kind of stuff. So you were really engaging in this part of the process.
Yeah, because it was a train depot that was acting as our location also. It was all sort of looped together in one big contract and one big filming sequence. So it certainly we felt behooved to be intimately involved in all of that and making sure that as we moved through it, we were ultimately buying out a small town to complete the sequence also. So between all of it, it just made as much sense for us to be involved in it and making sure that those logistics went as smoothly as all the rest of it. So I think that was
I can only imagine when you're in areas that don't have a lot of experience filming, sometimes the speed at which people respond to requests can build a lot of anxiety for us as location managers and professionals. It's like we want the train to move now because the shot's happening in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And so if you leave them to their devices, you may not get what you have when you need it.
Yeah, and ultimately it just felt like the right thing for us to be involved in. Just like I said, because it was all contracted through us originally for sort of the whole beginning of the sequence and all the stuff that goes around it. Ultimately, we built that relationship with the people who were running the train also, so they trusted us to be able to give them a realistic heads up as to what the next steps were for completing all the work. So when they had questions about it, they'd ultimately come to us because they knew they'd get a realistic answer about what we were doing and what was going to be up next. So
Was that something that carried over into the areas, considering where you were, the types of locations that we were filming? Did you find yourself being maybe involved in things that typically you weren't involved in because of the nature of the relationships you had with those communities?
I think so. Ultimately, we were always involved intimately in letting those communities know what exactly our plans were. I find a lot in New Mexico, those, uh, those places can have bad experiences sometimes with smaller productions or different productions. So I think both Connor and I and Patrick we've always put our best foot forward and tried to be as involved in those things as we could be, just so if anything does go awry, we're that first sort of line of defense between the production and that, so we can sort of solve those problems a lot faster than maybe anyone else could when it comes to anything like that. So that was always sort of our MO whenever we would go to an area, is just build those relationships as early as possible.
This question is for both of you. Connor, I'd love to jump in maybe first. Can you talk about a specific experience that you might have had with whichever location, but a specific experience you had with any of the local community that was a special one for you? Not necessarily challenging or even funny, but just one that had special significance for you.
Yeah, I know Nate just talked about our train station, which was really kind of our big one for the season because it was the season finale. But we also have the derelict farm, which played as our hippie commune in the
Yes.
series, if you guys have ever seen it. And that area, I'm a LA native, but I've been out here in New Mexico working the last few years. Nate pointed me in that direction, and when we found it pre-filming, it was kind of one of those places you stumble upon and you just smile because you found something that was so cool. And that ranch, it's a 400-acre ranch, Rancho Las Lagunas, owned by the same family back to when New Mexico was controlled by Spain. And it was just an awesome location. It used to be a family dairy farm, so you had all these really cool buildings that have kind of not been used for 30 years that kind of played a major part in those few episodes. And the farm itself, still family operated, still 30 uncles and cousins and everyone to negotiate with and get them to agree to have us there. And they were just so thankful in the end because they oftentimes have to put in a lot of money for all the property taxes, and they worry about losing this family farm. And we were able to use it in season 3 and then season 4, which will be out next year for different locations.
Just to dial in a little bit on that for a second, before I ask Nathan to respond as well. Um, when you're working with these types of locations where there is such a history, um, or no history at all, say someone just bought the house, but you can tell that they could use some help. Um, do you see how does that impact the impact of you bringing in an income that they might not have had, and who knows, this income may take them through a couple of years. Like, um, can you just maybe expound on that, whether or what your thoughts are on that, or have you had conversations with these people about maybe how having having those funds come in for these people, how that might have changed their lives, if any?
Yeah, I think it's great because I think even though the family was united, I think they were probably thinking about subdividing the property, building homes on the property. Nate mentioned, we film on a lot of Pueblo land, which in New Mexico is Indian reservation land. So private land gets landlocked a lot. So when you have this private ranch that's kind of in the middle of 4 or 5 pueblos, it would be worth it for them to subdivide that. So if we can provide, a little bit of extra income for them to, maybe they won't do it for a few more years. I think that definitely helps. It'd be a shame to lose, that ranch has been in their family for 300 years. And I think now with some of the money they got, they actually have a lawyer now who's helping put a lot of the land into a nature conservancy. So that farm is now going to be preserved for a long time.
I guess they owe you a little thanks for that, for finding them. Nathan, if you can share any special experiences that you might.
I tell them not anywhere we film. I tell them don't change it now. now that we've been there, usually they're few and far between those real gems. And I always tell people, like, we love it exactly as it is. Like, don't change it now. Now that we've been here, don't go changing anything, because that seems to happen more often than not. As someone gets money and then suddenly there's a brand new garage or something out front, and usually but that's my first reaction, is to tell them, like, we love it exactly. Please do something else with the money.
Yeah. Send your kids to college.
Yeah, exactly. Put it in the stock market or something. Just don't go changing the property yet.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate both of you. Congratulations on the nomination. It's a great series. It's a great story to tell. I'm going to be kicking this back over to my compadre, Sasha.
Thank you. Yeah, that concludes our period television panel for today. Thank you to all of our finalists who were able to make it for this. I know we were missing a couple of our finalists, but so glad that everyone here was here to tell us their stories. Huge thanks to my co-moderators, everyone else. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody.